Good morning. On today's Bible reading, we are reading, I'm sure everyone's favorite chapter, Leviticus. We are going to do Leviticus 1 through 7 today. As you know, this is filled with a lot of rules and regulations and the laws of the land. All right, let's get into it. God called Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting. Speak to the people of Israel, tell them, when anyone presents an offering to God, present an animal from either the herd or the flock. If the offering is a whole burnt offering from the herd, present a male without a defect at the entrance to the tent of meeting, that it may be accepted by God. Lay your hand on the head of the whole burnt offering, so that it may be accepted on your behalf to make atonement for you. Slaughter the bull in God's presence. Aaron's sons, the priests, will make an offering of the blood by splashing it against all sides of the altar that stands at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Next, skin the whole burnt offering and cut it up. Aaron's sons, the priests, will prepare a fire on the altar. Carefully laying out the wood and then arrange the body parts, including the head and the suet, on the wood prepared for the fire on the altar. Scrub the entrails and legs clean. The priest will burn it all on the altar, a whole burnt offering, a fire gift, a pleasing fragrance to God. The whole burnt offering comes from the flock, whether sheep or goat. Present a male without defect. Slaughter it on the north side of the altar in God's presence. Sons of Aaron the priest will throw the blood against all sides of the altar. Cut it up, and the priest will arrange the pieces, including the head and the suet, on the wood prepared for burning on the altar. Scrub the entrails and legs clean. The priest will offer it all, burning it on the altar, a whole burnt offering, a fire gift, a pleasing fragrance to God. If a bird is presented to God for the whole burnt offering, it can either be a dove or a pigeon. The priest will bring it to the altar, wring off its head, and burn it on the altar. But he will first drain the blood on the side of the altar, remove the gizzard and its contents, and throw them on the east side of the altar, where the ashes are piled. Then rip it open by its wings, but leave it in one piece, and burn it on the altar on the wood prepared for the fire. A whole burnt offering, a fire gift, a pleasing fragrance to God. When you present a grain offering to God, use fine flour. Pour oil on it, put incense on it. Bring it to Aaron's sons, the priest. One of them will take a handful of the fine flour and oil with all the incense and burn it on the altar for memorial. A fire gift, a pleasing fragrance to God. The rest of the grain offering is for Aaron and his sons, a most holy part of the fire gifts to God. Sorry about the camera. I have a cat that's playing with his mouse and knocking into the camera. When you present a grain offering of unbaked loaves, use fine flour mixed with oil but no yeast, or present wafers made without yeast and spread with oil. If you bring a grain offering cooked on a griddle, use fine flour mixed with oil, but without yeast. Crumble it and pour oil on it. It's a grain offering. If you bring a grain offering deep fried in a pan, make it of fine flour with oil. Bring the grain offering you make from these ingredients and present it to the priest. He will bring it to the altar, break off a memorial piece from the grain offering, and burn it on the altar. A fire gift, a pleasing fragrance to God. The rest of the grain offering is for Aaron and his sons, a most holy part of the gifts to God. All the grain offerings that you present to God must be made without yeast. You must never burn any yeast or honey as a fire gift to God. You may offer them to God as an offering of first fruits, but not on the altar as a pleasing fragrance. Season every presentation of your grain offering with salt. Don't leave the salt of the covenant with your God out of your grain offerings. Present all your offerings with salt. If you present a grain offering of first fruits to God, bring crushed heads of the new grain roasted. Put oil and incense on it. It's a grain offering. The priest will burn some of the mixed grain and oil with all the incense as a memorial, a fire gift to God. If your offering is a peace offering and you present an animal from the herd, either male or female, it must be an animal without any defect. Lay your hand on the head of your offering and slaughter it at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Aaron's sons, the priests, will throw the blood on all sides of the altar. As a fire gift to God from the peace offering, present all the fat that covers or is connected to the entrails, the 2 kidneys, and the fat around them at the loins, and the lobe of the liver that is removed along with the kidneys. Aaron and his sons will burn it on the altar along with the whole burnt offering, that is, on the wood prepared for the fire. A fire gift, a pleasing fragrance to God. If your peace offering to God comes from the flock, bring a male or female without defect. If you offer a lamb, offer it to God. Lay your hand on the head of your offering and slaughter it at the tent of meeting. The sons of Aaron will throw its blood on all sides of the altar. As a fire gift to God from the peace offering, present its fat, the entire fat tail, cut off close to the backbone, all the fat on and connected to the entrails, the 2 kidneys and the fat around them on the loins, and the lobe of the liver which is removed along with the kidneys. The priest will burn it on the altar, a meal, a fire gift to God. If the offering is goat, bring it into the presence of God. Lay your hand on its head and slaughter it in front of the tent of meeting. Aaron's sons will throw the blood on all sides of the altar. As a fire gift to God, present the fat that covers and is connected to the entrails, the 2 kidneys, and the fat which is around them on the loins, and the lobe of the liver which is removed along with the kidneys. The priest will burn them on the altar, a meal, a fire gift, a pleasing fragrance. All the fat belongs to God. This is the fixed rule down through the generations, wherever you happen to live. Don't eat the fat, don't eat the blood, none of it. God spoke to Moses, tell the Israelites, when a person sins unintentionally by straying from any of God's commands, breaking what must not be broken, if it's the anointed priest who sins and so brings guilt on the people, he is to bring a bull without defect to God as an absolution offering for the sin he has committed. Have him bring the bull to the entrance of the tent of the meeting, in the presence of God. Lay his hand on the bull's head and slaughter the bull before God. He is then to take some of the bull's blood, bring it into the tent of meeting, dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle some of it several times before God. Before the curtain of the sanctuary, he is to smear some of the blood on the horns of the altar of fragrant incense before God, which is in the tent of meeting. He is to pour the rest of the bull's blood out at the base of the altar of whole burnt offering at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He is to remove all the fat from the bull of the absolution offering, the fat which covers and is connected to the entrails, the 2 kidneys and the fat that is around them at the loins, and the lobe of the liver which he takes out with the kidneys. The same procedure as when the fat is removed from the bull of the peace offering. Finally, he is to burn all this on the altar of the burnt offering. Everything else, the bull's hide, meat, head, legs, organs, and guts, he is to take outside the camp to a clean place where the ashes are dumped, and it is to burn it on the wood fire. If the whole congregation sins unintentionally by straying from one of the commandments of God that must not be broken, they become guilty even though no one is aware of it. When they do become aware of the sin they've committed, the congregation must bring a bull as an absolution offering and present it at the tent of meeting. The elders of the congregation will lay their hands on the bull's head in the presence of God, and one of them will slaughter it before God. The anointed priest will then bring some of the blood into the tent of meeting, dip his finger in the blood, and sprinkle some of it 7 times before God in front of the curtain. He will smear some of the blood on the horns of the altar, which is before God in the tent of meeting, and pour the rest of it at the base of the altar of whole burnt offering, at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He will remove all the fat and burn it on the altar. He will follow the same procedure with this bull as with the bull for the absolution offering. The priest makes atonement from them, and they are forgiven. Then they will take the bull outside the camp and burn it just as they burned the first bull. It's the absolution offering for the congregation. When a ruler sins unintentionally by straying from one of the commands of his God, which must not be broken, he is guilty. When he becomes aware of the sin he has committed, he must bring a goat for his offering, a male without any defect. Lay his hand on the head of the goat and slaughter it in the place where they slaughter the whole burnt offering, in the presence of God. It's an absolution offering. The priest will then take some of the blood of the absolution offering with his finger, smear it on the horns of the altar of whole burnt offering, and pour the rest at the base of the altar. He will burn all its fat on the altar, the same as with the fat of the peace offering. The priest makes atonement for him on account of his sin, and he is forgiven. When an ordinary member of the congregation sins unintentionally, straying from one of the commandments of God which must not be broken, he is guilty. When he is made aware of his sin, he shall bring a goat, a female without any defect, and offer it for his sin. Lay his hand on the head of the absolution offering, and slaughter it at the place of the whole burnt offering. The priest will take some of its blood with his finger, smear it on the horns of the altar of whole burnt offering, and pour the rest at the base of the altar. Finally, he'll take out all the fat, the same as with the peace offerings, and burn it on the altar for a pleasing fragrance to God. In this way, the priest makes atonement for him, and he is forgiven. If he brings a lamb for an absolution offering, he shall present a female without any defect. Lay his hand on the head of the absolution offering and slaughter it at the same place they slaughter the whole burnt offering. The priest will take some of the blood of the absolution offering with his finger, smear it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and pour the rest at the base of the altar. He shall remove all the fat, the same as for the lamb of the peace offering. Finally, the priest will burn it on the altar on top of the gifts to God. In this way, the priest makes atonement for him on account of his sin, and he's forgiven. If you sin by not stepping up and offering yourself as a witness to something you've heard or seen in cases of wrongdoing, you'll be held responsible. Or if you teach anything ritually unclean, like the carcass, and if you touch, not teach, if you touch anything ritually unclean, like the carcass of an unclean animal, wild or domestic, or a dead reptile, and you weren't aware of it at the time, but you're contaminated and you're guilty. Or if you touch human uncleanness, any sort of ritually contaminating uncleanness, and you're unaware of it at the time, but later you realize it, and you're guilty. Or if you impulsively swear to do something, whether good or bad, some rash oath that just pops out, and you aren't aware of what you've done at the time, but later you come to realize it, you're guilty in any of these cases. When you are guilty, immediately confess the sin that you've committed, and bring as your penalty to God for the sin you have committed a female lamb or goat from the flock for an absolution offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement for your sin. If you can't afford a lamb, bring as your penalty for to God for the sin you have committed, 2 doves or 2 pigeons, one for the absolution offering and the other for the whole burnt offering. Bring them to the priest, who will first offer the one for the absolution offering. He'll wring its neck but not sever it. Splash some of the blood of the absolution offering against the altar and squeeze the rest of it out at the base. It's an absolution offering. He'll then take the second bird and offer it as a whole burnt offering, following the procedure step by step. In this way, the priest will make atonement for your sin, and you're forgiven. If you can't afford the 2 doves or pigeons, bring 2 quarts of fine flour for your absolution offering. Don't put oil or incense on it. It's an absolution offering. Bring it to the priest. He'll take a handful from it as a memorial and burn it on the altar with gifts for God. It's an absolution offering. The priest will make atonement for you and any of these sins you've committed, and you're forgiven. The rest of the offerings belongs to the priest, and same as with the grain offering. God spoke to Moses, when a person betrays his trust and unknowingly sins by straying against any of the holy things of God, he is to bring as a penalty to God a ram without any defect from the flock, the value of the ram assessed in shekels. According to the sanctuary shekel for a compensation offering. He is to make additional compensation for the sin he has committed against any holy thing by adding 20% to the ram and giving it to the priest. Thus the priest will make atonement for him with the ram of the compensation offering, and he's forgiven. If anyone sins by breaking any of the commandments of God, which must not be broken, but without being aware of it at the time, the moment he does realize his guilt, he is held responsible. He is to bring to the priest a ram without any defect, assessed at the value of the compensation offering. Thus the priest will make atonement for him for his error that he was unaware of, and he's forgiven. It is a compensation offering. He was surely guilty before God. God spoke to Moses, when anyone sins by betraying trust with God by deceiving his neighbor regarding something entrusted to him, or by robbing, cheating, or threatening him, or if he has found something lost and lies about it and swears falsely regarding any of these sins that people commonly commit. When he sins and is found guilty, he must return what he stole or extorted, restore what was entrusted to him, return the lost thing he found, or anything else about which he swore falsely. He must make full compensation, add 20% to it, and hand it over to the owner on the same day he brings his compensation offering. He must present to God as his compensation offering a ram without any defect from the flock, assessed at the value of a compensation offering. Thus the priest will make atonement for him before God, and he's forgiven of any of the things that one does that bring guilt. God spoke to Moses, "Command Aaron and his sons, tell them, these are the instructions for the whole burnt offering. Leave the whole burnt offering on the altar hearth through the night until morning, with the fire kept burning on the altar. Then dress in your linen clothes with linen underwear next to your body. Remove the ashes remaining from the whole burnt offering and place them beside the altar. Then change clothes and carry the ashes outside the camp to a clean place. Meanwhile, keep the fire on the altar burning. It must not go out. Replenish the wood for the fire every morning. Arrange the whole burnt offering on it, and burn the fat of the peace offering on top of it all. Keep the fire burning on the altar continuously. It must not go out. These are the instructions for the grain offering. Aaron's sons are to present it to God in front of the altar. The priest takes a handful of the fine flour of the grain offering with its oil and all its incense and burns this as a memorial on the altar, a pleasing fragrance to God. Aaron and his son eat the rest of it. It is unraised bread, and so eaten in a holy place, in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. They must not bake it with yeast. I have designated as their share of the gifts presented to me. It is very holy, like the absolution offering and the compensation offering. Any male descendant among Aaron's sons may eat it. This is a fixed rule regarding God's gift, stretching down the generations. Anyone who touches these offerings must be holy. God spoke to Moses. This is the offering which Aaron and his sons each are to present to God on the day he is anointed. 2 quarts of fine flour as a regular grain offering, half in the morning and half in the evening. Prepare it with oil on a griddle. Bring it well mixed and then present it crumbled in pieces as a pleasing fragrance to God. Aaron's son, who is anointed to succeed him, offers it to God. This is a fixed rule. The whole thing is burned. Every grain offering of a priest is burned completely. It must not be eaten. God spoke to Moses, "Tell Aaron and his sons, these are the instructions for the absolution offering. Slaughter the absolution offering in the place where the whole burnt offering is slaughtered before God. The offering is most holy. The priest in charge eats it in a holy place, courtyard of the tent of meeting. Anyone who touches any of the meat must be holy. A garment that gets blood splattered on it must be washed in a holy place. Break the clay pot in which the meat is cooked. If it was cooked in a bronze pot, scour it and rinse it with water. Any male among the priestly families may eat it. It is most holy. But any absolution offering whose blood is brought into the tent of meeting to make atonement in the sanctuary must not be eaten. It has to be burned. These are the instructions for the compensation offering. It is most holy. Slaughter the compensation offering in the same place that the whole burnt offering is slaughtered. Splash its blood against all sides of the altar. Offer up all the fat tail, the fat covering the entrails, the 2 kidneys and the fat encasing them at the loins, and the lobe of the liver that is removed with the kidneys. The priest burns them on the altar as a gift to God. It is a compensation offering. Any male from among the priest's families may eat it, but it must be eaten in a holy place. It is most holy. The compensation offering is the same as the absolution offering. The same rules apply to both. The offering belongs to the priest who makes atonement with it. The priest who presents a whole burnt offering for someone gets the hide for himself. Every grain offering baked in an oven or prepared in a pan or on a griddle belongs to the priest who presents it. It is his. Every grain offering, whether dry or mixed with oil, belongs equally to all the sons of Aaron. These are the instructions for the peace offering, which is presented to God. If you bring it to offer thanksgiving, then along with the thanksgiving offering, present unraised loaves of bread mixed with oil, unraised wafers spread with oil, and cakes of fine flour, well kneaded and mixed with oil, along with the peace offering of thanksgiving. Present loaves of yeast bread as an offering. Bring one of each kind as an offering, contribution offering to God. It goes to the priest who throws the blood of the peace offering. Eat the meat from the peace offering of thanksgiving the same day it is offered. Don't leave any of it overnight. The offering is a votive offering or a free will offering. It may be eaten the same day it is sacrificed, and whatever is left over on the next day may also be eaten. But any meat from the sacrifice that is left to the 3rd day must be burned up. If any of the meat from the peace offering is eaten on the 3rd day, The person who has brought it will not be accepted. It won't benefit him a bit. It has become a defiled meat. And whoever eats it must take responsibility for his iniquity. Don't eat meat that has touched anything ritually unclean. Burn it up. Any other meat can be eaten by those who are ritually clean. But if you're not ritually clean and eat meat from the peace offering for God, you'll be excluded from the congregation. And if you touch anything ritually unclean, whether a human or animal uncleanness or an obscene object, and go ahead and eat from a peace offering for God, you'll be excluded from the congregation. God spoke to Moses, "Speak to the people of Israel. Tell them, don't eat any fat of cattle or sheep or goats. The fat of an animal found dead or torn by wild animals can be put to some other purpose, but you may not eat it. If you eat fat from an animal from which a gift has been presented to God, you'll be excluded from the congregation. And don't eat blood, whether of birds or animals, no matter where you'll end up living. If you eat blood, you'll be excluded from the congregation." God spoke to Moses, "Speak to the people of Israel. Tell them, when you present a peace offering to God, bring some of your peace offering as a special sacrifice to God, a gift to God in your own hands. Bring the fat with the breast and then wave the breast before God as a wave offering. The priest will burn the fat on the altar. Aaron and his sons get the breast. Give the right thigh from your peace offering as a contribution offering to the priest. Give a portion of the right thigh to the son of Aaron, who offers the blood and the fat of the peace offering as his portion. From the peace offerings of Israel, I'm giving the breast of the wave offering and the thigh of the contribution offering to Aaron, the priest, and his sons. This is their fixed compensation from the people of Israel. From the day they are presented to serve as priests to God, Aaron and his sons can expect to receive these allotments from the gifts of God. This is what God commanded the people of Israel to give the priests from the day of their anointing. This is a fixed rule down through the generations. These are the instructions for the whole burnt offering, the grain offering, the absolution offering, and the compensation offering, the ordination offering, and the peace offering, which God gave Moses at Mount Sinai on the day he commanded the people of Israel to present their offerings to God in the wilderness of Sinai. And praise God, we don't have to go through all that anymore. As you know, Jesus Christ was the perfect Lamb and was offered up for our sins. He took all of his sins on himself the day he was crucified. All right, that is it for today's Bible reading. As always, get in touch with God today. I'll see you again tomorrow, unless it's Sunday. I don't know where we are in the schedule. Otherwise, Sunday is the day for you to just reflect on your sermon. Bye.